Welcome to Shades of Us. I'm your host, Daryl Brown.
What does it mean to be a part of a younger generation? We bring you some Gen Zers who are navigating their way through the world, amplifying their voices, and connecting with their peers. According to a 2020 Pew Research Center report, Gen Z or Generation Z refers to the generation born between 1997 to 2012, succeeding millennials.
When it comes to Gen Z, activism is a buzzword. Let's hear from an 18-year-old changemaker who started her own nonprofit to inspire others.
That whole sense of just leading with love and understanding that everyone deserves to feel seen and to feel heard. I think that that's something that Gen Z has definitely mastered, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so proud to be a part of the generation that I am.
Hi, my name is Anya Dillard. I am an activist and the founder of The Next Gen Come Up. I've always been super passionate about pro-human issues, whether it be human rights, civil rights, environmental justice. I come from a family of Black creatives and entrepreneurs, so I always grew up knowing that I wanted to do something with my talent, that I wanted to be unique and help other people, feel like they had the nerve to express themselves as genuinely as they could. It's been a journey finding myself as a creative change maker, especially because when I got involved in advocacy, I was only about 12 years old. Art has always been a medium that I thought was super powerful, especially when it came to people, bringing up controversial topics or trying to push the needle in any societal realm. I think, having the creative outlet involved within the activism aspect helped me a lot. Every generation has had some sort of renaissance or some sort of, time where expression was the outlet, whether it be creative, whether it be intellectual. But the reason why I identify Gen Z as one of the most expressive generations is because previous generations have always kind of tried to convince young people that they should stay in their place as young people, they should just listen to the adults, and once they leave the house, they can start having their own opinions. And that's never been a healthy narrative. You have to kind of make up for the fact that, your bias of my age or my gender even has nothing to do with my capability or my ability to, express a life experience. Because while I am younger, boy, have I lived a life. And I always tell people, like, regardless of the age of somebody, you can learn something new from everybody. My parents have always been my biggest advocates and my biggest fans. And even when they didn't necessarily understand the opinions that I had, they were always trying their best to listen, and they were always super curious about, where these opinions were coming from, because they knew I was actively trying to educate myself about what was going on in the world. And they appreciated that more than anything, that I was trying to become a well-rounded thinker. Despite the fact that I'd always been raised an artsy kid and that I always loved the arts for a long time, I thought I wanted to be a scientist. I remember when I started going to these STEM programs, I would look around and I would be like one of very few Black people in general, and often one of like one or two Black girls in a room. And I was like, where does that come from? Because all the smartest science nerds I knew were Black girls. That's when I realized that despite the fact that growing up Black for me had been such a positive experience, society was actively working against other young people and trying to make sure that, they viewed their Blackness as a hindrance. I have always found beauty in my Blackness and in my Black experience, and I really wanted to utilize whatever resources I could to make sure that other young people felt that pride. The Next Gen Come Up for the past 4 years has been dedicated to organizing community outreach, charity events, and protests in advocacy for a bunch of different causes. We started out as a media publication at first. I started writing articles and just creating posts that got people informed and helped my friends tap into the current events that I was interested in. And then as the years went on and as I got more involved with boots on the ground work and with charity and philanthropy and all these different kinds of things, we've kind of prioritized that hands-on community aspect. We've organized so many amazing cultural celebrations and visual campaigns that help to raise awareness and get people talking about issues related to women, issues related to kids with disabilities, all kinds of things. And I've been super, super proud to not only accomplish that individually, but to be able to bring so many other amazing young people that are interested in getting involved into the fold as well.
I think it's important to get Gen Z specifically involved because we are the most able, we have the most resources, we have the most present day understanding of our lived life experience, the life experiences of people that have come before us, and we know what we want to see for generations that come after us. I've always tried to tell young people that regardless of what industry you go into, always move forward with compassion, always have empathy, because there are always going to be people that really do need your advocacy. It's just been super empowering for me to be able to, utilize everything that I've done to show young kids that you can do it too. There's nothing stopping you. I promise you, you're more than capable of accomplishing your wildest dreams even before you get to college. I have gone through the gambit of self-doubt, especially at the beginning of my journey. Acknowledge the self-doubt is a thing that happens, but never let it overtake you. Never let it convince you that your dreams are silly or stupid or impossible, because they almost never are. And I think that, understanding that is the most positive motivation you could give yourself.
Now we meet a young writer from the Midwest who's trying to find his footing and his voice in this shifting world.
I always knew that I wanted to be a writer. Not always, but at least since I was in high school or whatever, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I don't think the pandemic or even college really changed that, but what's been my trajectory is just figuring out what it is I want to write about. My name is Sean Glatch. I use he, him pronouns. I identify as gay. I'm white. I think I'm blood type O negative. I grew up knowing that I was gay in, a fairly conservative part of Wisconsin. And so I didn't get to really explore my queer identity until I was in college, right? And that was its whole process, figuring out how to talk to other men, figuring out how to just navigate being publicly queer and being proud of that, and also figuring out how to put that into writing was definitely a really big process for me. And it's something that I'm still working through now in my writing, right? I think that queerness is something that's going to affect my writing for decades to come.
Mothman pointed his camera at me, and I loved his angles, his rule of thirds, the way his camera cleaved my jawline and washed me through with light. I was almost beautiful, almost on fire. Was I bright enough to devour? And he was cryptic behind the camera lens, hirsute with little mysteries.
So I was doing marketing work for just this agency based in Tampa, and they brought on Writers.com as a client because they knew that I was a creative writing major, had a really strong opinions about building literary community. They were brought on as a client, and eventually Writers.com kind of stole me, and my role just kind of grew into being one of the administrators. I always knew that I wanted to move to New York, kind of because New York has this whole prestige of being the city of writers. I just knew growing up that it would be a place where I would fit in. And of course the pandemic changed a lot of that because the pandemic's kind of changed the city in a lot of ways. The pandemic has certainly made writing a much more solitary experience, which has its benefits and its drawbacks. There's the benefit in that I feel what I'm writing is much more authentically myself because I've had so much time to just sit with myself and figure out my own work.
I don't blame Mothman for his hunger, but I set myself on fire just to be something worth wanting. Now I'm unlit ashes in his memory.
My qualm with writers having to be on social media is more so that writers are kind of being expected to have a following before they get published. If you want to publish in one of the big five, or if you want to publish in one of the larger indie presses, you need to have a fairly sizable following on a reputable platform. So not even on Reddit or Tumblr, right? You need to have a good following on Twitter or Instagram or maybe Facebook. And it just sucks because it means that only people who already have a voice are being published. And it also relegates a lot of the work of promoting your writing onto the writer, right, onto the author. When before that, it was usually the publisher who was responsible for most of the book promotion work. And so now there's just so much more that there's so much more that's being expected of writers, which makes it hard to just do the writing. I would love it if I was part of like a queer writers community. I've been searching for that in the city. I haven't found one that I like quite yet, and honestly, I'm thinking about starting my own. That's certainly been something that I've been looking for. I don't do everything that my generation does. Like, I don't have a TikTok, and TikTok is like a big Gen Z thing, so I don't know what the latest trend is, for example. But I feel like we're all going through this feeling of, like, for example, somebody in their 30s who like encountered the pandemic, like they had a sort of established life before the pandemic happened. Whereas for somebody like me, who's just entering adulthood, who's just figuring out his queerness, who's just figuring out what he wants to write and do in life, like there's so many question marks. When is the pandemic gonna end? What is life gonna look like after that? How am I supposed to be navigating it? Like, I don't have as much like information, you know? Like about navigating the world as somebody 10 years older than me does. And people younger than me are probably even more like confused, you know? Like, what are they doing with their life? Like, when is this all gonna end? So I can certainly relate to people my age on that front. And even though we've got a lot to figure out and the internet has impacted us negatively in some ways, like, I really do have faith that my generation's gonna like succeed.
According to a recent Brainly survey, Generation Z isn't prioritizing income when compared to other older generations.
Here's a teaching fellow who understands young people. Born into a digitally connected world, global citizens by default. He also knows how education will need to pivot in the future.
I remember sitting in front of a dial-up computer, dial-up webcam, talking to my grandparents before I went to school. Having that connection to my family in Taiwan, being able to visit and having that privilege of being able to visit for 2 to 3 months at a time, dramatically changed the way I saw myself as a global citizen. Because I felt that connection to my cousins, my family, my grandparents, it fundamentally shifted the way I was thinking about those halfway around the world. Hey there, my name is Dustin Liu. I'm currently a teaching fellow at Harvard University, and outside of that, I work as a consultant. When I think about my work as an educator or as a consultant, I often think about, what behavior change can I make in this organization, and how can I make this organization more caring? I feel like we're all experiencing a crisis of connection, exacerbated by COVID-19. And particularly now, we need to understand that we're more alike than different. When I think about my work with a variety of organizations, it all comes down to reassessing the distance that we see between ourselves and others. And I think because of social media, because of young people lifting narratives up, because of our ability to hear and understand life experiences and narratives from all around the world, that becomes a little bit more possible. My earliest memories were spent serving my community, and that was really a function of my mom and dad being really involved in the community at large. Service work covered our weekends. Saturdays were volunteering at the senior homes. Sundays were really thinking about how we could solicit donations on the street for a disaster or a natural disaster that was happening in the world. Growing up in a context where I had visibility to so many changemakers, where I could see different types of change making, where service work became a part of who we were as a family, has changed the way in which I see how that fits into my life today. My earliest memories are supporting my mom in classrooms, teaching elders in our community English so that they could speak to their grandchildren and pass their citizenship exam. And now, today, I still do that work when I'm living in Boston. My parents are the exact opposite of what you would expect from a stereotypical Asian trope of a parent. My mom and my dad have always prioritized what I was curious about and what I enjoyed. I remember, when I was 3 years old, I would beg to take cello lessons. I was interested in dance because I watched a ballet and I said, that's actually what I want to do. And my parents, bless their hearts, never said no. And I feel so privileged to be able to have engaged with so many different perspectives and use so many different parts of my brain. When I think about how that's influenced me today, being able to draw on creativity, being able to have some predisposed curiosities about what it means to do science research, what it means to do math research, that really creates, for me, an interdisciplinary lens by which to see the world. I had the honor of serving as the U.S. Youth Observer for a year. I served as the 9th U.S. Youth Observer to the United Nations, and through that role, I had a chance to meet with a variety of different young people. Something that I went in with was I had anticipated a lot of apathy from this younger generation, that a lot of folks just weren't aware of the issues. What I actually learned is that we're feeling overwhelmed by the issues. I didn't notice apathy. I noticed a lot of stress and paralysis based on the challenges that we need to face, from climate change to homelessness to food insecurity. When I understood that, we really just need to maintain the hope. The conversations that I had with young people became very different. I think mental health has really been a critical issue that I've been hearing from young people, particularly destigmatizing the conversation around mental health. And I have such respect for youth activists that are really pushing that conversation forward. I think particularly in communities of color or communities that are traditionally marginalized, these are places where the conversation about mental health has not been as present. And really having young people lead that conversation, normalize talking about mental health and prioritizing it, has created more sustainable activist movements and also allowed young people to be more vocal and more vulnerable in their efforts to sort of bring this crisis to light. When I think about what makes Gen Z so interesting, so powerful, so groundbreaking, is the ability to connect across difference. I see, and I saw during COVID-19, how youth movements still maintained vibrancy and vigor because Gen Z was thinking about creative ways to connect across borders, across time zones, across countries. I think so often we just need to remember that young people are not alone, and that we are also experts of these challenges because we're living them every day. Having that perspective and being told, hey, you don't need to wait your turn in order to be a leader, makes a profound impact in the lives of those young people. I think from a young age, I've always seen education as a place where students can feel seen, heard, and respected. And I've sort of seen that power in my own experience as a student. I know the impact that my teachers have made on me as a human. I know the impact that my teachers have made in terms of helping me find my own power and find my own agency. And I think that we need to really consider the fact that school's changing in really beautiful ways, that we're not just learning in the classroom, we're learning at work, we're learning in all facets of our life. And I'd love education to move to a place where we're pursuing lifelong learning rather than just thinking about learning in the classroom. I've had a chance to meet with a variety of students all around the world, and what really makes a difference is when students feel cared for and when students understand what compassion feels like. And I feel like when students experience that, or any human experiences that, it creates a ripple effect. I really think that when we have moments where people are fully held for who they are, we're creating change makers to tackle our world's toughest challenges.
According to a 2020 Morning Consult tracking report, 62% of Generation Z agree they have the potential to impact the world.
Enter the space of a blogger who has created a platform on which she connects with other Gen Zers. Her aim? Unifying a generation.
I am a unifier. I feel like I was put on this earth to bring people together across differences through conversation. My name is Sophie Barron, and I'm the founder and CEO of The Conversationalist. I'm constantly finding new ways to travel to different locations, different college campuses, and amplify Gen Z voices outside of New York City. So much of why I wanted to start these conversations really connects back to my upbringing. Growing up in Wichita as the only Jewish kid was challenging. My family had very strong Jewish values, and I felt like I identified as a Jewish person, but I didn't have any role models to look to, and I didn't have any people to really sort through my identity with. I felt like I was alone in that journey outside of my siblings. Having to miss the football games on Friday nights to go have a Shabbat dinner with my family, in the moment I resented that part of myself, but now I realize that that was the biggest piece of my identity, that as soon as I started leaning into it, it would make me live my most authentic life to help me make an impact in the world. Eventually, I was ready to leave the Midwest for college, and I followed the yellow brick road to the University of Pennsylvania. I immediately gravitated towards all of the other Jewish students on campus. I was joining every Jewish club and felt like I belonged. I had a realization that every single person on my campus only wanted to surround themselves with people who were like them. During the heated presidential election of 2016, everyone on my campus felt incredibly polarizing. There was no space on campus to talk about the issues that mattered ahead of the election. There was a moment where I was sitting in a finance class. It was the night before the election, and my teacher decided to tell our entire class who we needed to vote for. He essentially shared that if we did not vote for this candidate, we would be doing a disservice to our country. And there was something within me that ignited when this was happening. And for the first time, I felt like I had the agency to use my voice. And in that moment, I took pen to paper and I started writing about what I was feeling. I started sharing my story about why we needed to break outside of our echo chambers. Why are we struggling to connect? Why are we failing to have these conversations that bring us together? What is so beautiful about Gen Z is that we have so many ways to have conversations that we have also done that at The Conversationalist to meet Gen Z where they are. Throughout the pandemic, we realized that there was such an urgent need for community. Young people everywhere were wanting to come together and have these conversations, but had nowhere to go. So we started to build a community on the platform Geneva, where young people are in our app 24/7, 365, talking about every issue under the sun that matters to them. Anything from politics to pop culture to mental health, current events, and the list goes on and on. And that has been such an important component of our platform, because if we are going to bring our generation back together, we have to have a place where every young person can be heard. It's one thing to have a conversation online, but it's another thing to have a conversation in person. So I decided to launch the first ever Gen Z talk show called POVs. POVs stands for Points of View with a Z for Gen Z, so we can really dive deep into what Gen Z really thinks about every issue that matters to our generation. Our platform really fills that void of creating a place by young people for young people to address the issues that matter, while also exposing you to different perspectives that you would not encounter within your own echo chamber on social media, at the dinner table, on your sports teams, or in the classroom. Because now more than ever, we need to realize that the world is so much bigger than what we believe. Ideally, we would love to reach every single generation with our mission, but we've got to start somewhere. For the first time, our generation, with the world at our fingertips through social media, has a tool to start using their voice now. And there's no shade against older generations. I love my parents and people who come from, the Gen X generation and millennials. And at the same time, I also struggle at times to break through to people who are of older generations, because for the most part, their ideas and their beliefs are set in stone. They've experienced the world. They're less likely to budge and want to listen and want to open up their minds. Sometimes when people hear that word unify and unity, we get caught up in this notion of coming together around a campfire, singing Kumbaya, loving thy neighbor, and completely compromising our own views. And I'm setting out on this journey to unify the world, to help other people understand that unifying is more about coming closer together with people who think differently than we do. I think right now, the state of our world today, with anti-Semitism rising, as a religious group that takes up 2% of our population, but yet is the recipient of over 60% of hate crimes in our country. I think there's something so scary about putting myself out there in this way as a Jewish woman. But at the same time, I feel like I'm doing my part to make the world a better place. A huge pillar of Judaism is something that we call tikkun olam, which means repairing the world. And in my own way, I think being able to bring people back to the same table that have been so divided is my own way of repairing the world.
That's our show. If you'd like to learn more about the guests we featured, check out our Facebook page at Shades of Us TV and online at tv.cuny.edu. I'm Darryl Brown. See you next time on Shades of Us.